Black museums, Black historical sites throughout the great state of Maryland every year. So it's an incredible place to be. The Banneker-Douglass Museum is operated by the commission. And before we get started, if there are any commissioners in the room, please stand and be recognized. Thank you. If there is any legislators or folks representing, I see some representatives from Stuart Pittman's office, our county executive. Any other elected officials or representatives that would like to be recognized? All right, well, give it up for yourselves. I do want to recognize our staff at the Banneker-Douglass Museum. We have a small but mighty staff, and we are growing. And I'd like to recognize Mr. LaRon Herbert, our new CFO, Ms. Shelley Collins, our new research and grants specialist lead, it's a long title, Ms. Taylor Mead, and how you all got here by way of our marketing and promotion, Ms. Janley. I gotta give it up to our dynamic director of programs, Brooklyn-born, okay, Ms. Sabria Hassan. So I gotta say a few things about this show, okay? Since the radical voice of Blackness speaks of resistance and joy exhibit opening, we've had more than 100,000 people reach this exhibition through our online programs and on-site visitation, putting us on track to have a record number of visitors in 2023. The exhibit has been featured in a number of publications and media outlets from the Washington Post, Radio 1, Upstart Magazine, and the Capital Gazette. We have led docent tours engaging people of all ages, and we've produced artist talks and educational programs. In fact, this exhibit inspired our new museum after-school program in partnership with the Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis. Students in our program work with teaching artists to learn about your artwork and create their own artwork, ultimately resulting in an exhibit opening at the museum with First Lady Dawn Moore. You can see their work in the lobby. And a summer New York trip to visit the Jay-Z exhibition at the Brooklyn Library. And we created a mural in collaboration with other New York City youth. It was a powerful time, and I do want to give a shout out to the County Executive's Office who gave us a grant in support of this project, and to our amazing Director of Programs who put this all together. Centering Black history is an act of social justice. There are forces today trying to marginalize and even erase the voices of Black artists. When we first installed the statue of Harriet Tubman entitled Araminta with Rifle and Bebe by MacArthur Genius Fellow Dr. Joyce J. Scott as part of this exhibition, it was later vandalized and the staff which she was holding was stolen. Soon after, we received a threatening email to our general mailbox that used a racial slur, that they were happy that the statue was desecrated and that more should have been done to us. To say the least, it was a very difficult time for our staff and commission. But with the support of the curator, Myrtis Bedolla, the greater Annapolis community and the police department, our local delegate, Shane Henson, and media, those that stole the staff gave it back. And as a museum, I'm sorry, it was a really emotional time. As a museum that is rooted in Black activism, we did not fold, but made a commitment to purchase the statue of Tubman so that she can continue to be a beacon of what our museum represents. I want to thank you, Myrtis, for your collaboration. I want to thank you for your spirit of excellence, your heart, your vision, and to the artists today, Phylicia Ghee, Grandpa G, Wendel Patrick, Jerrell Gibbs, Oletha DeVane. Your work means more to me and our staff than you can ever know. So thank you. I wish our students in our after-school program were here today, because honestly, your work, Jerrell, your installation had never really been exposed to installation art, really inspired a new generation of artists and community leaders. So thank you so much for your work, your vision, and your passion. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the mic, so to speak, to the curator of the exhibition, Myrtis Bedolla, who brought her vision and artistry and creativity and scholarship to this institution, and to Annapolis and the greater Maryland community, Ms. Myrtis Bedolla.
Thank you, Chanel. As you know, it's been an honor to work with you and your staff on this journey. I'm a little sad because today is the last day of the exhibition, so I thank you all for showing up and supporting this endeavor. It's been one that's been life-altering for me. It provided an opportunity for me to reconnect with artists that I've worked with in the past, and then certainly the opportunity to work with new artists who I have admired for a number of years. So before I begin, I just wanted to put the exhibition into context, just read a brief statement about it, and then I will be in conversation with each one of the artists, but I'll introduce them formally first. So to my left is Jerrell Gibbs, Wendel Patrick, Edward D.G. Sr., Phylicia Ghee, and Oletha DeVane. So, the radical voice of Blackness speaks of resistance and joy. It is a compelling exploration of the multifaceted experiences, expressions, and emotions within the Black community. In this exhibition, the voices of Black artists resonate with power and resilience as they investigate the complex terrain of resistance against oppression and the celebration of unbridled joy in the face of adversity. Through a diverse range of artistic mediums and personal narratives, the work sheds light on the profound and transformative nature of Black culture, illuminating the enduring spirit that continues to inspire and uplift. It is a testament to the enduring legacy of Black resilience and their enduring spirit and pursuit of joy in the face of harshness and adversity. So I will begin with being in conversation with Oletha DeVane, who is a printmaker and whose piece in the exhibition, Minty, pays homage to Harriet Tubman, who we all know was born in slavery, escaped, and subsequently freed others as a conductor on the Underground Railroad. So Oletha, tell us why you chose to celebrate the life of Harriet Tubman.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
First of all, let me thank you for being here. I think it's amazing that you turn out on a beautiful, what I call silver Saturday. It's really quite lovely. I must admit, I've been working with the concept of Harriet Tubman, her person, for over 30 years. And when Myrtis asked me to participate in the exhibition, I was so thankful that I had a piece left, because it is one of the areas in terms of printmaking I have chosen to represent her through a body of work. Some of it happened to revolve around scarification, issues that led from what I call the African scarification, which was about beauty, and of course the enslaved people who were scarified through the whip, and we know that happened to Harriet. The print that you'll see that's on the second floor here happens to focus on her as a young woman. And now that you have seen her image many, many times over, you know, it is so wonderful to me to realize that this kind of radical, what I call radical history, because she was radical as far as I was concerned, I'd always enjoyed that part of her as a woman, because it was important to realize that somebody had this errant spirit that would go out into the world with compassion and change things. And that is why I do some of the prints around her. What I love too at this point in time is that she's being recognized. She's finally being recognized truly for who she was. And if these young people who are here today, again, I love seeing your faces, and when I mean young, I mean like, you know, really young. You need to listen to those stories. You need to know those stories. And you need to know it not only from the point of view of the icon of Harriet Tubman. It's not just about her iconography. It's about what she did, who she was as a person.
And the piece is titled Minty. So share with us why it's titled, why you chose the title itself.
Araminta was her name, her given name. Minty was a family name, like, you know, your nickname, Peanut, like Peanut. Or, you know, and I often thought, you know, that here we are, you know, in our various families, you know, that idea of being able to break down those names to the level of closeness, right? Because you want to be close to your family. My name is Oletha. My parents call me Lita. All right, I will let nobody else do that to me. But for Minty, it's a very familiar family relationship. All right, that's why she chose to be able to call herself Minty. That's why I chose the print to name that.
And let's talk about some of the visual elements in the print. You have the sweet gum tree, and why was it important to feature that tree in the piece? And then also tell us about the pods. That's an important part of the experience of escaping, and why that became a barrier for some as they were running away with Harriet, and how she would threaten those who didn't have the wherewithal to continue on that journey.
How many of you know what a sweet gum tree is? I mean, there's a scientific name for it. I mean, those of you who are scientists probably know the scientific name. But the sweet gum tree actually is quite unique in its own existence as a plant and as a tree. And it has 5 fingers on its leaves. They look like stars. On that tree is this gumball, which is spiky.
I tripped over it.
Yes. And I try to use them in my exhibitions every time I can. Every time there's an issue around talking about what the sweet gum is and how important it was to the African American culture. And the reason it was important was because it was the kind of seed pod that if you boiled it, it became a tincture or a salve for wounds. It could also be drank as a tea. And so there's this wonderful, incredible book that I read a long time ago by Kate Larson, who did a book called Balance of Freedom. And she talks about how Harriet would test those who were escaping. They had to walk, because most people had to leave, the enslavement, barefoot. They didn't have shoes, for the most part. But they had to leave. And if they could walk across the sweet gum halls, they were tough enough to continue on that journey with her. Now, if they weren't, that rifle would come out. And she'd say, you can't go with me. No, there's no way you're going to go on the Underground Railroad, because you're going to make me leave people behind. So we all know that story to a degree, but to really internalize that story, I used to have people walk across the sweet gum walls if I had them in my exhibitions. Specifically, if I laid it out as an installation, I wouldn't make them, I have to take that back, I wouldn't make them walk across, and I would suggest that they walk across the sweet gum walls just to see what they felt like. Because they were like needles, in the feet of so many people. And people would actually take off their shoes and try it. I was always fascinated by those who were brave enough to try it. And so, to me, that was one of the obstacles that was in place for people who were trying to escape. And it is something that one has to experience to understand that.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to Jerrell Gibbs now. So I want to also mention that in curating the exhibition, the space is divided into imagery on one side that reflects resistance, so to my right are works that reflect resistance, and to the left on this floor are those that express joy. And so Jerrell's piece, in a different cloth, Jerrell is a painter, by photographs that were found in an aunt's family photo album. Jerrell, would you like to talk about that experience and why that album became so pivotal in your life in terms of how it informs your work?
Absolutely. First, thank you all for being here. Appreciate your time. And thank you to the Banneker Museum for having us here today and having me here as well. It's been a seamless process, which isn't always the case, so I greatly appreciate it. Photo albums. So they came about at a very transitional space in my life, or time, sorry, transitional time in my life. My family, which consists of my wife Sheila and our daughter Regan, we had just moved out of our apartment and we moved into my aunt's house, which I grew up in, kind of like in the Park Heights area, if you're familiar with that area. And I was, at the time, just gearing up to go to graduate school. So I went to undergrad 2 times. I went to Bowie State University, I dropped out of Bowie State. I went to Bowie State University, dropped out of Bowie State, and got back into drawing at the time. Long story short, ended up getting into painting. So all of this kind of happened seamlessly. I moved into my aunt's house and discovered about 15 to 20 photo albums that were in the basement that I've never paid attention to prior to. And again, I literally grew up in that house, so it was almost like a time thing. And great, oh my God, it's good. So I found those photo albums and started sifting through them. And then I I started to think about these experiences that most people aren't able to access because they're here, you know, and unless you know us on a personal level, be able to be in this space, you won't have the opportunity to hear these stories or see it. So when I get to graduate school in 2018, I spent a lot of time still, you know, searching through those photo albums and not really looking for anything in particular, but just exploring and seeing what catches my eye. And then the more I looked through the photo albums, the more I began to understand what was important to me as a creator, as an artist, as a painter specifically. And what I was able to realize was my family and my friends and my personal story and their stories was what resonated with me the most and was what I wanted to talk about the most in terms of narrative. So when I got to graduate school, I just stuck with those images from those photo albums, and they became like the foundation of my practice from a visual standpoint.
So what your aunt, the gift that she gave you was the family memories, capturing those precious moments, preserving that. Often, I wish that I had such a gift in my family. Our history is so scattered and piecemeal, just so much separation. So I understand the depth and the importance of what your aunt preserved for you, passed down to you, and how it has changed the trajectory of your life and your career. And that's really quite precious. And something else that you said in a statement, an interview for Be More magazine, was that, you know, often we are not able to pass down finances in terms of wealth and maybe property, but those photographs are far more valuable than anything else, right, that you could have been gifted with. Let's talk about some of those photographs are family members that are known and unknown. And in a different cloth, you shared with me in a conversation that we had that you don't know this woman, but let's talk about the visual elements in that piece. Some were actually in the photo, and some you embellished too. And so talk about that for us, please.
Yeah, so the painting right there, different cloth. This is one of the works that I created while I was in graduate school, and I was in the beginning stages of my practice in terms of representation. You know, I was really interested in seeing Black people in works of art. You know, I was interested in the idea of my daughter being able to go to like a museum or gallery and see herself, someone that looks like her. I was interested in having young Black boys like myself who grew up in Baltimore to be able to experience themselves in spaces that they never, you know, had the opportunity to see themselves before. So while I was working on these, while I was looking through these photo albums, I happened to come upon this woman, and she was sitting in the chair, and I mean, I've seen that photo maybe like 30 times, and then at the moment, it just made perfect sense, and I wanted to capture the energy that I received from the photo, if that makes sense. She just sat there in that chair, and it was something about her presence that made me want to paint her. And the more I started to look at the photo, I started to think about culture and like what is specific about this photo and what's in this photo at this time that it was taken that's important to our people. And for her, it was her clothing, it was the chair, you know, so after that I started to think about, okay, like, how does fabric play into our culture? Like, what's the outfits that we're wearing on a specific period of time? What does that mean to us? And how we dress and how we appear to others is important So I really just got in tune with that, to be completely honest with you. The flower, I really think they're tulips. Like, again, I did this maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. So at the time, I think I was painting, I think that was the purple tulips, and if they were, that is a symbol of, if I'm not mistaken, like loyalty. Something else that's very specific to that. But our shoes, you know, like the attention to detail, the scarf around her neck, like all of that was important. Her ring, you know, showcasing her ring, signifying her commitment in marriage, you know, like that was all important. The chair, the quality of the detail in the chair, you know. The background. So this is where I start to nerd out and get like excited about talking about painting. The background in particular, I covered it because I couldn't figure out how to best solve this problem that I was struggling with. But after I did it, it began to make sense. It became like a veil, you know, because like when you see people, when you meet people for the first time, you get to experience them at the moment that you meet them. You know, like that's what you get to know about the person. But you don't have full access to that individual unless you're provided that opportunity. So the white and the black in the background is almost like the veil. It's almost like the barrier. Like, this is what I'm allowing you access to, but everything in the past, everything behind the space is still mine, it's still personal, it's still for my family and my loved ones. And in the background, there's wallpaper by Jerrell Gibbs, who was an African American interior decorator. It's called Harlem Tour. And there's a lot of other pieces that were done and created by African Americans as well, but I won't make this too much longer.
I think she is a consummate example of joy. A Black woman who is poised and beautiful and needs to be celebrated. Yes. All right, I'm going to move on to Mr. Wendel Patrick here, who's a photographer, composer, musician. Are you still in your fellowship at Harvard? Is it Harvard or Yale?
It was Harvard, and that fellowship ended, but has since been extended for 2 years. So yes, I'm still on.
And professor, right? You're teaching.
Yes, professor of Peabody Conservatory.
So you're just twiddling your thumbs these days. Things to do. I love people like this. So let's begin by talking about your photography and the photograph, more or less. Take us to the moment where these two women were captured. What was going on?
Sure. And first, I want to echo the sentiments of my fellow artists. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today and to be included in the exhibition. I was very moved when you reached out to be included today. So, with this image, this was taken during the Freddie Gray uprising. And I want to say that I took this image on the second public day. If you look at the photograph, you can see that there's a lot of media were present, and I think it was sort of the second day that wave of media just kind of flooded in. And you know, as you mentioned, I'm a musician, and I really just was having trouble practicing or working on music at all, and just was feeling very antsy and uncomfortable, like I think a lot of people were. And I live just a few blocks north of Lexington Market, and that day there was a sizable police contingent that had formed just blocks, about 2 blocks down from where I lived. And I saw them going by, and just kind of went out to see what was going on, and I just went back in and just grabbed my camera and just started walking around. For like 2 or 3 pictures was a way to sort of process my own feelings and emotions. And so I walked from my place, actually along the march that day, up to Penn North, and I spotted these two women holding these signs about 10 minutes before I took this picture. And they were walking along with all of us. There were a lot of really moving signs that people were carrying. And so then we all sort of stopped, and I approached them and I asked them if I could take a picture, and that was really the only conversation that we had. I didn't ask them about the signs. I certainly was not there as a reporter at all. I just wanted to document it. And so I took the picture. I took a lot of pictures over those 2 or 3 days, and I had no intention of sharing it at all. It was really, like I said, it was for cathartic purposes. But then I posted a couple on Facebook, and almost immediately, they just started to get shared well beyond my own circle, with people commenting, and a lot of pictures that I took were of community up there. There were a lot of my artistic friends were there, providing music for kids that were present. There were a lot of people sort of doing drum circles, and there was arts. A lot of things that just weren't being depicted on the news at all. The news was all just blurring the things, and all Baltimore was on fire. So I thought I would post these, and they started to circulate. And I was reading some of the comments from people that I didn't know, and people were just sort of saying that there was a much more natural human element that was being represented. And that was, that wasn't my intention. And it really made me start thinking about how a lot of the time art that we make, once it goes out into the world, even if we don't necessarily think of it as art, it takes on a meaning and a life of its own that goes beyond what we certainly anticipated. And so after that, a lot of people have been interested in this particular image, and there's certain things that I'm not sure I even really noticed at the time that really kind of go along with what they wrote. For one, what I did notice was that the sort of this thought is posed as two questions, right? And clearly those are signs that were made, right? So the question could have been posed as an answer. It could have said, my life matters as much as hers. My life doesn't matter less than hers. But it's posed as a question. I also thought it was interesting, and of course this is, a certain amount of this is projection, but I think art allows for this, but the fact that the camera crew is behind, and it's sort of like, to me that represents sort of the world, this constant view of many things, in this particular case race, just sort of like observing, but not really sort of doing much. And that's really what I felt like the media was doing here. Like, it's like, we were all watching them sort of descend on somebody for an interview, and then they'd be like, oh, there's so-and-so, bye, and then we just go to the next interview. So, also the fact that the woman on the left is peeking over her sign, which that has sort of like a personal significance to me.
And what would that be? The fact that the black woman's face is somewhat concealed, and the white woman's face is fully revealed. And so what does that say to you?
Well, to me it represents, I have often felt, just personally, and I have friends that I feel the same way who are black, who don't feel like they're fully seen. It's like, you're either seen as much as you're allowed to be seen without necessarily being too much of a threat, or you're just not really sort of given the full vantage point that is often accessible to others, or you have to work sort of hard to achieve that. Certainly, these two women turned to me and I asked them to hold their signs up, and that's how they chose to hold them up. But when you look at
been very meaningful to me, very poignant. I felt that the messaging was, and the questions that they're posing are ones that we all need to ask one another. The fact that these two women collaborated with one another, wrote these questions and posed them to the world, so to speak, and you're capturing that moment during the uprise. And we're still contemplating those questions today. That photograph was taken in 2015, and we're still in 2023, still asking those very same questions. And I think that we have not progressed in the, as it comes to how we deal with race-related issues in our country. We've digressed with, efforts to remove books from the shelves that talk about Black history, and so much is being censored now that it really is very concerning to me. So we're still having this reckoning, this racial tension in our society that has not quelled in any way. Things are exasperated and taken to another level of concern, especially for me. So let's move on now to Warsaw, your video, which for those of you who may not know is playing in full in the theater room across the hall where the goodies are. And we're going to listen to a brief excerpt from that, and then Wendel is going to break down those lyrics. The title is Who Am I? Right? I really think that you should, share with people the complexity behind putting this together.
Sure. Okay. So the gentleman who's rapping is he's a dear friend of mine, one of my best friends. He's also one of my favorite MCs on the planet. And if you have a chance to watch the video, if you haven't seen it already, you can check to find it online as well. So the track itself is called Warsaw, and it's from an album of mine called Travel. And every track on that album is named after a different city where the music was either written or the thematic material was composed. And that was filmed about just 2 blocks from where I live, in front of a beautiful mural. And the other gentleman that you see that is walking out of the frame, that's Easy Jackson, who's another dear friend of mine, phenomenal MC, and just a wonderful individual here in the city of Baltimore, a number of things. And so I don't know if you can tell just from that short clip, but everything on this side of the screen was in slow motion, and everything on this side of the screen was in regular speed. And the whole video was shot in one take. So even though one side is in slow motion, the other side is not, it's actually all one take. Easy at the time worked at the DeVane said it. One is in reference to Warsaw. That's actually snow on the ground. It's very, very cool thing. And secondly, because of the content of some of his lyrics, which he also recorded that all in one take, which was like mind-blowing to me. But the essence of the song is, you can hear there's certain biblical references, and there's a lot of religious references, but they are all very closely tied to certain devious human actions, which represents how humans can take God and religion and use it for their own purposes. So he actually, the song starts with the line, who am I? A part of the Red Sea, left Moses and his followers behind me. I wrote 12 commandments. He dropped 2 climbing up the mountain, but the rest had enough about him for all of y'all to get the picture. So it's like, it starts with who am I, and then throughout the song there's who am I is repeated because there's a personal reference, and individuals can take responsibility for what they choose to do with information that they have, whether or not they choose to use it for good or to diminish the lives of others. So for example, when he says, all men are created unequal by the gun, aimed at the natives. So if you listen carefully, there's a lot that goes on in the song, and it's all just one continuous verse.
I love it. It's powerful rhythm, rhyme, the syncopation of it. Probably not spontaneous, but it just flowed so beautifully, so seamlessly. And the lyrics are written down and in the theater room for you to follow and read. You make a study of it because it's really worth the time to really understand what is being conveyed. So thank you. All right, we're going to turn to, I've been given permission to call him G. So we're going to turn to G, the painter. Actually, I understand, but not just a painter. You produce sculpture, multimedia artists. So, G, I'm going to sort of share with folks a little bit about your history as an artist. You began as a commercial artist. You became an illustrator for many years. But producing work, celebrating Black people has come very late in your career. It was not really an early part of your career. Am I stating that correctly? I don't want to mistake. Okay. And talk a little bit about why that's so, because you came along during a period we have our younger artist here, but
oh yeah.
Yes. So you came along during a different period. I mean, still an artist and finding freedom to fully remains a challenge for artists even today. But I think the circumstances that you faced coming along as a young man who was discouraged from pursuing art in the way that was true to you, the way in which you wanted to express yourself, was not encouraged. So share with us a little bit about that.
Well, like I said, I came along. I'm an old ass man, 76 years old. Okay. so I came along. When I came along, it was like none of this was happening. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know anything about. I had asthma. Every year, probably once a week or once every 2 weeks, I had to get a shot of penicillin. It got to the point that penicillin, I wasn't an artist. There was no inspiration in my household. I was the oldest of 8 kids, and I was the sickest. Being the oldest, I was the sickest. I had asthma. I had malnutrition. I was picked on. I was bullied as a young man, as a young kid. As I grew up, I was separated from my father. I was separated from my mother. She had an episode where I was separated from my other siblings, and I came to live with my father. But during that time, I was then about 9 years old. That's when I discovered that I went to college, I started getting more into my art, because I'm a self-taught artist. So as I got more into my art, my father told me one day, and you can't make no money being an artist. So he was putting me down. He didn't appreciate the fact that I was an artist, that I was putting time into art. So he, just stayed on my case about being an artist, and that was a waste of time. It's okay, to do it as a hobby, something just to amuse yourself. But it's nothing for you to go out here and make a living with.
So art became your refuge.
Well,
And something else I think that's important for people to understand, and Phylicia shared this with us the other day, is that you're legally blind also.
well, that came a little later, as I've always had problems with my eyes, period. Because when I was coming up, we were in a situation, I guess my mother, really, I wasn't with my father. I mean, I don't want to talk about that, but...
So let's talk about then the paintings. And let's start
my paintings.
Go to the, okay, so let's start with 4 women.
Oh, well, as far as the women, black women?
Yes.
No.
All right. So your work is featuring the theme of joy. And so you're celebrating, let's talk about the celebration of black women
Celebration of black women?
in your work.
Celebration of black women, because I got a black woman that I live with that's a strong-ass black woman.
Yes.
And I appreciate her. She's the rock of my family and all, and everybody that knows me knows that. My thing with black women, like I said, I was a caricature artist. I was a caricature artist downtown in a harbor. So basically, being a caricature artist, I was also an illustrator. When I went to school as an illustrator, I graduated from Carver in the city. Well, in Carver, I was in the sign painting class. In the sign painting class, I had my teacher, Jordan. He would always tell us, and it was basically on a racial type of thing. As a black man, you're not going to make you're not going to make a living as an artist. The best you can do, and what we were trained to do, is be sign painters, and that's what happened. When I came out of school, I found out maybe he was right. You know what I'm saying? I went with my portfolio to different places to try to get a job as an artist. And one of them was sun painting. They wouldn't even allow me to go upstairs to show my portfolio because they were looking for a cartoonist, an artist to draw. And I was a cartoonist, I was a caricature artist, and they wouldn't allow me to do that. So now I got a family. I had a son and a daughter. When I graduated, my son was there.
But you remember what we talked about?
Okay. But that's what happened.
So let's talk about the beautiful. Let's talk about the beautiful women in
But
the
the beautiful
team.
woman. First of all, the beautiful woman started with my wife.
Yes.
Miss G. All right.
Yes.
From there, as a caricature artist, like I said, I was doing probably more white establishment. I was a commercial artist. I was doing caricatures for businesses and stuff like that. I got into that. Then I had problems with my eyes. I ended up not being able to draw caricatures on the spot anymore. So I got home. I'm having problems with my eyes. So I started noticing, because somebody told me, say, gee, you need more black people. Because all I was doing was doing white people. You know what I'm saying? My business, I was making my living. So as my eyes started messing with me more, I started concentrating now on white people. So I started concentrating on black women. How beautiful and the difference in the shades, you know, dark skin, brown skin, white skin, and the difference in the lips. You know what I'm saying? How the black women got the, you know, these lips, the whole thing. The white women actually want to, you know. So I got into really, as a matter of fact, if you were at my home right now, I got big illustrations right now I'm working on now of black women. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm really, I don't know what happened, because when I was doing caricatures, all I was doing was white people. I was doing white people. Because I was paid to do that. Then when I got home, when I got away from that, I started looking in magazines and stuff like that. I said, darn, you know what I'm saying? I said, there's some beautiful black ass women in here. It's always the black ass.
So the women that are depicted in the piece titled For Women, are these women that you know, or what?
These are women that I know. These are women that you know, you got, you know, there are magazines with women with hairstyles and stuff like that. Black magazines, you got nothing but black women with different hairstyles and all that. So then I started going into that. I started getting magazines of black women with different hairstyles, along with black men with different hairstyles. So I started turning pages out and started, you know, looking at different complexions, different shades, started looking at the lips, the nose, and I started putting all that together. And that's when I came up with these two paintings, along with some of the other paintings that I have at home that's not here. But now, as a caricature artist, basically now I'm a fine arts artist. You know what I'm saying? I'm into that realm now, where that's what I'm looking for now. I'm looking for it to get even deeper into my culture. You know what I'm saying? And my culture is based around black women. You know, the hairstyle. You know what I'm saying? The lips, the nose, you know, the body frame, the butt, the booty, you know what I'm saying? All that. But who? Oh, the strength of black women? She knows that I got one at home.
So, you know, what I love about these paintings, the two, For Women and then A Study on Beauty, is that the way in which you celebrate black women, elevate them, and celebrate our different hues, our varied skin tones, different hairstyles, the way in which you validate our lips. Can we go to the next piece, please? The second piece here, Study on Beauty, is where the primary focus is our broad noses and full lips.
Well, y'all know, we got black women out here on TV trying to get our lips.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? All types, all that. You know what I'm saying? Trying to, you know, actually trying to, you know, I don't know, it's what's going on is that black women are some of the strongest women on this planet. People of color.
And we thank you for acknowledging that in your work and celebrating that in your work at a time, well, there has never been a time in our history where we have been, as black women, fully celebrated and appreciated. So to have a black man make us the focus of his work in celebration of who we are in our varied forms is something that's to be honored. So we thank you. To your granddaughter, I wanted to ask you one last thing. But tell us why you chose the Pan-African flag, the colors from the Pan-African flag, and what those colors represent.
Well, colors, see, when like I said, I'm 76 years old. When I came up, there was nothing about black, red, and green colors. I didn't know anything about the flag, about the African American flag. So, years ago, about several years ago, when, you know, Black Power and all that stuff came about, and the black movement, more or less, I got fascinated with the flag. Got fascinated with the colors. Got fascinated with what it means, black, people of color. Then I started saying, well, then it got red. That's the blood that we shared, you know, as slaves, and that we're sharing now today, even with our own culture. You know, saying we're spreading blood. You know, you got young people out here killing each other and all that blood. But we also got a lot of happiness, a lot of fact that we're stronger than we used to be. We're more united. Then we got the land, which is green. We don't have a whole lot of land, but we got more than we used to have. You know what I'm saying? But we still don't have the land that we should have, that was taken away from us. So those colors mean a whole lot to me because, like I said, I grew up not really knowing about these colors. Now, I grew up not knowing, I lived in a neighborhood that black people, we didn't talk about where we came from. We didn't talk about Africa. We didn't talk about, I didn't know what Nigeria is. I didn't know what none of it was. You know what I'm saying? We didn't talk about it like that. As I got older, and started realizing, you know, the value of my granddaughter has a lot to do with it too. You know, so she has a lot to bring forward, you know, hey dad, she goes into the history. I didn't know who my grandmother was on my father's side. My father never talked about my grandmother. I don't know who she is. Didn't know who my grandfather was. He never said anything about that. Never talked about the past. It was like a forgotten thing. You know what I'm saying? Africa was never brought up. My father never said anything about Africa. All this that I'm doing now, the pains and stuff that I'm doing now, is because I had gotten older. I started realizing things in my late, I would say, 60s. I was a caricature artist up until that point. In my eyes, I'm legally blind in my right eye. And I'm trying not to go blind in my left. So, you know, I'm taking, you know, all kind of, you know, shots and stuff, you know, drops and stuff to keep that from happening. But at the same time, I got a strong ass black woman that lives in my house. It's got my ass under control.
Let's talk about the strong black woman that's sitting next to me, your granddaughter, because I know that she's played an important role in your growth as an artist and influenced you. So Phylicia, I'm going to turn to Phylicia now, who is a interdisciplinary visual artist, photographer, curator. Her work documents transition, explores healing, ritual, ceremony, and personal rites of passage. And Phylicia, you're responsible for this extraordinary installation on the stage here and this video that we're going to experience. What your work brought to this exhibition was a balance between our joy and our resistance. Your work represents the healing that needs to take place in our community. It's a spiritual element. Because we are so traumatized, we needed to have something that was where we could be planted, rooted, and sit quietly and contemplate So we're going to start by talking about your installation and then sit as a collective group and experience your video. So talk to us about the installation and then explain to us the importance of the video and the title. Whatever you want to do.
So I would say I started this work in 2020. I started with the video work. It was during the pandemic. It was during all the uprisings. It was, to be honest, a lot of the pieces from the video actually started long before that. I recorded some of the clips in 2017 and 2018 over the years. So pretty much what I was doing was I kind of would see a moment and I would document that moment. And it would be moments where I noticed that I was feeling restored, or that I noticed that I was I had a significant experience of practicing a restorative practice. And the significance of that, a lot of the things that I talk about in my work derive from genetic memory. And I started to think about genetic memory a long time ago because I started to see how it started really with my grandfather. My grandfather has a huge impact on my practice. From the time I could hold a pen or a pencil, we were drawing or sketching or painting. It's a part of my life, it's a part of my language, it's a part of the way that it became a part of the way that I transmute my own pain, the way that I transmute my own trauma, and it became a way, my primary language. So in that, I started to notice like these things that I absorbed genetically. Writing from my mother, sewing from my grandmother. Like at a very young age, I remember I had this draw to herbs and plants, and that's another thing that has to do with my grandfather too. He's a green thumb. Like our family house looks like a jungle. So I've been surrounded by plants my whole life, but I started to explore plants a little differently from him. With lavender, and that plant really spoke to me because the scent alone could change. I noticed that it created this shift in my psychological state. And I didn't have the words for that, but I was like, hold up, I feel better. Because I sniffed some lavender. So I started to really delve into that. Like, what are these plants about? You know what I mean? What's my draw to these plants and these herbs? And I see things photographically and also in a moving image. And throughout the years, as I'm delving into those genetic memories, I'm understanding that those come from somewhere. Before I even knew where, I know that they come from somewhere in my lineage. So I will delve deeper into them and also see these moments that I want to document. Like, I always think about memory as something that, it's hard to put that into words, but memory is important to me. I think that's why I started to take photographs, because I needed to capture these moments. I've always thought about the transience and the temporality of our lives, and especially growing up with my mom and my grandparents being older, just thinking about documenting these moments that I had with them. Both I would record stories, I would document moments. So that's where the video came from. It's these documentation of moments where I'm noticing that I want to remember this. I want to feel this again, and I feel restored right now. So it's moments where I'm running my hand in the water, or in the ocean, or a moment when I'm making some tea, just the way the leaves look in the water, or a moment when me and my grandfather are gardening, and we planting some herbs and some plants, and so all these moments that are woven together like a tapestry, like a quilt, and pieced together. And then I'm speaking over the video as well, and it's a piece called, the spoken piece is called A Prayer for Us. And I don't really remember when it was, but I know I was asleep, these words came, I woke up, they were in my mind, I wrote them down. And so that's what I'm speaking speaking over the piece. In addition to a prayer that's like a cornerstone prayer in the Yoruba tradition, which I found out that I've been tracing our lineage, and I traced it a lot back to West Africa. So it's layered with whispers of prayers and me speaking prayers over these images of restorative healing practices that are woven together like a visual quilt. And I consider it a medicine for grief. I consider it a visual and auditory medicine. And the reason for that, in large part, has to do with the breathing part, the audio. So in addition to the prayer and the visuals, because I pieced these pieces together during the uprisings, during, like right after George Floyd was killed, and I was watching us, and I was seeing us saying like, we can't breathe, chanting, we can't breathe. And I just felt like that's wild, like why would we chant that, and why would we affirm that for ourselves, to not be able to breathe? If anything, I want him to have breath in his lungs. Like I want us to be breathing. We need to be breathing. And I noticed some different things, like my grandfather talked about, he had asthma. My mother has asthma. I noticed how shallow we breathe, you know? And like the breath is the life force, you know, it's the ashe in our bodies. It is like our breath is our signature in life. So, you know, just thinking about us saying that really hit me, and I was like, no, you know what? I'm gonna breathe for 8 minutes and 46 seconds to not only honor him, but to honor all of us, right? And to encourage us subconsciously, because I like to work with the subconscious mind a lot in the work, to breathe as well. So when you hear me breathing, like my hope is that people start to breathe a little deeper themselves, and then they just listen to it. They don't even know they're breathing deeper, but they just start breathing. And then, and the point of the breath is much deeper than just breathing and being alive and honoring that. It is that, but it's also that the breath allows our bodies to shift from a state of stress to a state of more calm. It engages the parasympathetic nervous system and shuts down the fight or flight response, which a lot of us live in the fight or flight response. Like I was breathing before I started talking because, you know, it just has this capacity to really change the state of the body. And that's what it did for me when I breathed for that duration of time. I literally felt like this euphoric type of energy because I breathed for that time and I didn't stop until it was 8 minutes and 46 seconds. So that's the work, the sound piece, the video piece. And I paired it with this installation because I really wanted to think about all of what I just said, the restorative and the healing practices which represent our resilience, which represent the ways in which we can and do heal one another, and that we pass down over generations and generations. Even with everything we've been through, we still pass down these practices, and they came through me. You know, I didn't even know, I just found out during the making of this work that my grandfather's mother was an herbalist. You know, so I didn't even know that, but I wanted to tap into that. I wanted to tap into the memory that we hold in our, like, the sinew. You know, the memory we hold in our bones, the memory that like nobody can take that from us. So I wanted to create this piece that was kind of like a recollection, but also, you know, and they all have a purpose and a meaning. And that's sorghum hanging up, like that's leaning up against the wall. And sorghum has is really significant in African American tradition and history, and comes from Africa. And came during the slave trade. And it's so many more things. The typewriter is there. I was thinking about George Washington. I was thinking about Benjamin Banneker. And I was thinking about Frederick Douglass. I was thinking about them too. I was thinking about them as orators, them as writers, but also thinking about like how these women in my lineage, the writing of recipes, how we don't write recipes, but some women wrote recipes, but I think about the writing of like recipes and the writing of, you know, these herbal remedies. And so I'm just thinking about what a space like would look like that a woman would have used or that someone would have used to create these medicines. What else? I don't know. I guess that's it. There's so many layers to it that it's hard to cover it all in a little bit of time.
No, but that was a beautiful interpretation of both the video and the installation here. And can we turn on the video? So we'd like to invite you all to just sit in a still moment and allow us to breathe together for the 8 minutes and 46 seconds of So we're going to open the floor for a few questions tonight. Yes, sir.
I have so many questions. But thank you for giving me a minute to breathe. I needed that. Your work with the city and the chair. I'm curious about the chair. Was that chair like in your aunt's house? Like, was that like a icon kind of piece? And in that piece, for me, you know, she seems like she was around in my younger days, and I like that hairstyle. The hairstyle, the flying saucer thing going on. I like that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The chair wasn't at my aunt's house. It was just the chair that the lady was sitting in was the chair that she was sitting in the photo. So I'm not really sure where it came from, where she actually took the picture at. But again, it was one of the photos that was in the photo album. But what I really appreciated about the chair was it almost spoke to, it reinforced the attention to detail with everything that she had on, you know, and the environment that she was placed in. Which I think is important because the decisions that we make speak to like who we are on a personal level and hairstyle as well. Like what I'm interested in is capturing moments that are specific to time, whether it's in the past or present. And I'm always thinking about how the past has influenced and impacted what I'm doing today. And I'm thinking in terms of like how I can go back to the past through these photos and kind of bring what I experience, what I see, and what I know to the painting as well. So again, a lot of the things that people gravitate to within the work are specific to a time and period. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to be able to present these moments that I feel like haven't been given the space or the platform to showcase beyond the ways that they were done. Like typically you'll see them in like music videos or whatever, or documented visually in that capacity. But in terms of like paintings and seeing them in museums, I think there's a whole era that wasn't presented to a group of people in these spaces, and I'm really excited about doing that.
Anyone else? I attended a Black Writers Conference at Howard University, and it was Hannah Nicole Jones, Phylicia Coates, Ibram Kendi, and another writer. What I noticed, and they were speaking to the Banneker folks, and what came through was the theme is, they are warriors, they don't care. They are going to speak to truth. And I see the intersection of art as well as journalism and writers who are not afraid. I'm along with G. I'm back in the day where we were not exposed. And so what I see now is people being purposeful. And the message I got from the writers and journalists was they are going to speak to truth. And this is what I see as speaking to truth. So it's kind of a complement between art and journalism and writing. So, and it's just, I've had 3 days of just splendor.
And thank you for that comment. I see the artists as our truth tellers, those who are documenting our experiences. And I thank the Banneker-Douglass Museum for providing this sacred space where truth can be told.
Can I just say something real quick about that as well? I wanted to also just say how grateful I am to be in this space, particularly for the history of this space. That's something I forgot to mention. This being a meeting space for free Black people for over 100 years, you know, the Banneker-Douglass Museum upholding that history, as well as being able to make work in the pulpit. You know what I mean? Like, that's deep. That just feels deep, and it feels very beautiful, and I just pay reverence and respect to all the spirits that were here before. And also, I'm grateful to be able to just pray in this space through my voice over and over again. Like, that was important in this work, that be there, you know, and to harken back to the history of this space.
Yes, and knowing that Frederick Douglass actually delivered the speech here. I mean, I know, wow, right? And to think that we are standing in this space, you know, where he once was. Yes.
Peace and good afternoon, everybody. I have two compliments and a question. The two compliments, the first one is I'm very glad we had an opportunity to really see Phylicia's work and hear it and feel it in a way that I think it was more intended to be than when the exhibit first opened. I also really appreciate the fact that I have an opportunity to see the artists and hear from their lens and from their mouths what this artwork is meaning to them. A lot of times we're kind of archaeologically digging back and be like, well, this Bearden meant this when he drew it. And you're kind of like, do you really know that though? You know what I mean? And I also think one beautiful thing about that is that we can see what we see, but the artist sees something different, you know? And there's a really good amalgamatory frequency to that. Three compliments. What I love about Mr. G is that it makes me think about Stevie Wonder, right? So Stevie Wonder, we don't even believe sometimes Stevie Wonder can't see, right? Because he wrote Ribbon in the Sky. How in the hell can he be so articulate about things that he physically hasn't seen? For Mr. G to articulately capture something that a lot of women have been denied the majority of our lifetimes, he captured it with quote-unquote altered or obstructed vision, but the vision was so clear. So in terms of clarity, my question is, we talk about being in community a lot lately. That's a new buzzword. But outside of being a cliche word and a buzzword, every artist on this particular panel has created, and even the people who were artists here that weren't on the panel, they've created something that inspires, uplifts, and challenges our community. So my question to you all is, what was your intention when you captured these visuals? Because the dopeness about all of you is that all of you are visual artists, but everything transitions itself differently. You know, and some of you are more than just visual artists, not to marginalize any of it, but this was all visual. Even some of the audio was still visual. So what were you doing, and what was some of your process and passion in the process of being in community? How did that tie into your work? And thank you.
You can. Let me say, I am a multidisciplinary artist. I do a lot of things. Most recently, I have done public art. And that public art consists of being able to dig into a history, our history. And it allows me to look at people who are just ordinary people, who had the wherewithal to move beyond circumstances. And I say that because one piece happens to be done on Lexington Market called Robert and Rosetta. Robert and Rosetta were basically in the marketplace. They were visible in that marketplace during the 1800s. And the thing about this particular project, I worked with a fabricator, a young fabricator who's an iron, metal, he works metal. My son and I worked together on the concept and the piece itself, but it was about this one man who was enslaved, on the plantation in Howard County, and I wanted to do that particular person because he sold butter at the market, and then he escapes. What I love about that is that Baltimore was a free state, more or less, we had enslaved people here, we also had people who were free slaves, or free people. They lived next to each other. My story was that Robert went and lived with his cousin. All right? I don't think that's a far-fetched story, even if I make it up. But the point is that there was a certain amount of resistance that Robert had. Unfortunately, the woman who was Rosetta, who was sold by the bailiff in Baltimore, there is no record of her, unfortunately, which says a lot to me about our disappearance, our invisibility, and how difficult, it is sometimes to pull that history and really understand how important it is, even if I were on the street myself, living in that community. How do I get, recognized? Where's my voice in it? And I feel like I'm a pretty ordinary person, so I'm looking for ways of magnifying those voices. I'm doing it now for a project in Missouri. I know. You gotta let somebody else do this. Yes. I just want you to know that there's public art out there that's been done by African American artists. Okay. Yes.
Does anyone else want to?
What I strive to do, I think I'm answering your question by saying this. I really want to be able to, more than anything, have my people look at my works and understand the value that we have within ourselves on a extravagant platform, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like when I grew up, if you aren't some sort of entertainer, and it's still kind of like this today, like, if you aren't on television, if you aren't doing something that everybody's talking about, you kind of don't have it. And I don't feel that way about the people that I love and the people that I see. I think the reason behind a lot of the foolishness that I find, like, my family and friends doing is centered around the idea that they don't value themselves, and that comes from being misrepresented, that comes from not seeing yourself in certain spaces. And I just want to reiterate the importance of our story, no matter where you come from, whatever it is. Like I say, like, my paintings are of my family, and they're taking me all over the world, like, literally. So if that's not enough to understand how valuable and how important they are, I don't know what else will be, But again, that's what I strive to do. Like, I want my daughter to see these works, and I want her to grow confident within herself and know that she's a beautiful Black young girl. And I want my wife to be comfortable with who she is and how she looks. I want myself to be comfortable and confident with how I look. And that's really what it comes from for me.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, from my personal standpoint, I talked a little bit about the origins of that picture, but really it all started with me walking towards a community, right? Like, I did not want to be at home by myself just sort of processing what was going on. I just wanted to go for a walk and be around people. And so I walked for several miles with people who presumably wanted to feel the same way. Like what we were doing was communal. You know, I guess the irony is that I was doing something communal, but really the images were not initially intended to be communal at all. Right? And I think sometimes as artists, it's difficult, or it's challenging for us to understand that we don't necessarily need to show up as artists the way we think we should, but sometimes there's other ways for us to do that. I also think intentionality is very important. As a musician, one of the things that I like to try to do is to, for those of you that don't know, I'm a music producer, but I'm also a jazz and classical pianist and hip-hop producer, a lot of different things. And I've recently had the opportunity to perform with some very important symphonies in hip-hop capacity, especially this year celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip-hop. So did a wonderful performance with the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra, and Darren Atwater, who's an incredible African-American composer. And but I was on turntables with the Philadelphia Orchestra, which is amazing. But I was recently commissioned to write a piece, a symphonic piece. And what I chose to do was to write, it's a classical piece of music, but it's a theme and variations on the theme from Most Deaf's Now Yasin Bey's Auditorium with Slick Rick. But it sounds like Prokofiev or Rachmaninoff. It has that feel, but the entire thing is based on this theme from a hip-hop track, which was actually sampled by Madlib from a Bollywood film from the 70s. Right? So it's a way of, again, taking something that I love, which is hip-hop, which is very much rooted in Black American culture, and sort of spreading it into these areas and spaces musically and sonically that you don't really find it. Like a lot of times when symphonies reach out to artists like myself or others, they're sort of like, well, we want you here, but we want you to do that hip hop thing you hear, do it in the symphony. So for me, it's a lot of it is, in terms of community, is giving opportunities for other composers and musicians and performers to enter into these spaces and to participate, but really sort of authentically as myself or as ourselves, which is my hope.
And one thing I wanted to add to that was, by you doing that walk and taking those pictures as an individual, as artists, and I know we all can attest to this and have seen it if you're an artist, sometimes how we heal ourselves as individuals, that's how we're so connected intrinsically and extrinsically. That healing that you were doing, for that level of understanding, help to heal and give a level of understanding to other people, even though that wasn't even your necessary intention.
Well, I certainly hope so.
Can I say something about that? I think it was contrarily, that was my intention with this work, but it was like not so broad, at first. I just wanted to feel better, really. You know what I mean? And I just needed to breathe. And in that though, in creating the work and in sharing the work, the intention developed to influence the physiology of people who experienced it. So that, speaking to intention, but also I wanted to speak to community. And in fact, you being a part of my community and helping with this, like dragging this heavy stuff, and my community being here with me today. I think of community, I think of community very deeply. It's not something that I use it's like a buzzword, but it's not something I use in that fashion. My community, we care for each other reciprocally. This work is about care. It's about community care, but but it's also about self-care, and it's about how those two things feed into each other. And a prime example of that is how the work came together. My girls, Kathy and Yvette, right here in the front, they was here with me for 7 hours constructing this work. You know what I mean? They've been with me on a lot of my works, you know, and have worked with me just even when it got difficult, even when things weren't coming together properly, like they would show up, they would offer me not just like help me put the work together, but give me a hug. You know what I mean? Like give me like touch and care and love and just like a level of presence. Like I think community is a lot about presence, not just being physically present, but being spiritually present and being mutually present with somebody. Like they with you, you with them. We here together in this moment, and that's what the breathing is about. So I just think about a community really deeply connected to presence and deeply connected to our humanness and the ways in which we're interwoven. Oh, and my dad too. So I'm gonna say about my dad real quick. My dad is my cornerstone. Okay, my dad and my grandmother and my mother, but like my dad is the reason why I'm an artist. So to be sitting here with him, that's another like level of community, but that is family. Like that is like indescribable to be sitting with my grandfather, who is also an artist, who I made work with from the time I was born, to be sitting here talking with him. You know what I mean? Like I think that speaks to community on another dimension, and it's just like really special because I wouldn't be who I am without him.
And to add to that, I wouldn't be here without her. But she was the one that brought me into this. You know what I'm saying? And to answer my other question, I got to the point of being a caricature artist where I was doing, like I said, mostly, the white generation. Got to a point where I was drawing people that looked like me. And that in itself started to inspire me more to draw people that looked like me, that had the same complexion, same tone, the lips, the body. Got me involved with doing people in realistic, not caricatures. I was good at what I was doing as a caricature. I could take that down. But being a fine artist now, doing real life people and doing people that looks like me is, I'm just getting started, saying the truth.
And something he's taught me through doing that type of work is about our visibility. Like in the face of erasure, we are here. Like I never felt invisible as growing up as a Black woman in our household. You know, I felt like I had a voice. I felt like I can articulate myself in whatever way. I can make whatever work I want to make. You know, I never had those limitations of feeling invisible.
Please give a round of applause to the artists.
The works featured in this exhibition, from the statue of Harriet Tubman outside, the beautiful artwork that you see in the building, was a true labor of love to bring at the Banneker-Douglass Museum. The radical voice of Blackness speaks of resistance and joy. Took a little over a year to plan and to fundraise, and I want to give a special thank you to our funders, the great state of Maryland, the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture. We have a fundraising committee here at the museum that I do want to honor. The We Rise committee, the co-chair, Sonia Swagger, is here. Raise your hand, Sonia. The Arts Council of Anne Arundel County, Visit Annapolis in Anne Arundel County, the Office of Anne Arundel County, County Executive's Office, the City of Annapolis for your support in making this exhibit and exceptional youth and public program series happen. I want to thank all of you for being here. We do have, even though this is the last day of the exhibition, we did publish a catalog that is on sale in the back. Here it is. Ooh. Artists, you all gifted a copy, of course, as well as Myrtis. And we do have something special for Myrtis. We have a citation, not a parking ticket. This is a good citation from Governor Moore, and it states, Myrtis Bedolla, greetings. Be it known that on behalf of the citizens of this state, in recognition of her visionary curation and unwavering support, Bedolla has significantly contributed to the celebration and recognition of Black artists, their diverse perspectives, and their profound impact on the art world. Her dedication to fostering an inclusive and empowering artistic community has not only enriched Maryland's cultural landscape, but also served as an inspiration for artists and art enthusiasts alike. We are pleased to confer upon you this Governor's citation given under my hand in the great state of Maryland this 30th day of September 2023, Governor Westmore. And please purchase our catalog. It is fantastic, beautifully published. Proceeds go to support our youth and public programs and future exhibitions, so thank you.
Definitely have like All right. There's 25.